Hello friends! Today I review the Ridgid R4512 table saw. Stay tuned. The Ridgid R4512 table saw is one of the most used tools in my shop. With its 10-inch blade, 27 by 40-inch tabletop, accurate parallel fence, and precise measuring gauges along the front rail, I've upped my woodworking game significantly since purchasing it. Let me show you why. The front of the table saw has three main features. First, this foot pedal here raises up this entire heavy piece of machinery and makes it nice and portable around your shop. I'll show that in just a moment. This is a sizable table saw. The cast iron top alone is 250 pounds, but with four very strong load-bearing casters underneath it and a great lift mechanism, I can move it with one finger, and so could you. Here is the raising and lowering mechanism for the blade on top. There's a center button by which you can lock it, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey of course, so that it's not raising and lowering on you. But I will say in my experience over the last year, I've left that unlocked and I haven't noticed my blade rise and lower. And lastly, the on and off switch. I'll show that in a moment when we talk about the left-hand side of the saw. But it should be noted that this table saw comes wired for 120 volts. However, it does have the capability to be rewired for 240 volts if that's what your shop has. The right side of the table saw affords us with storage as well as a mechanism with which to change the angle of our blade. So here we have cross-cut storage. Here we have storage for the wrench tools used to change the blades, and I've got a spare blade sitting right here behind them. And here we have, with a lock in the center, this is the gear with which to change the angle of the blade. Now there is an angle guide on the front side of the saw like we saw. But I prefer to use a digital bevel gauge. That helps me make sure I have the perfect 90.0 degree angle on my saw. And when you're dealing with large pieces of furniture or things that have a long cut, the last thing you want is to be off by 0.2 or 0.3 degrees. It might be indiscernible at first, but when you're doing those glue ups and you're assembling them, every bit of accuracy is important. There's not much to say about the left-hand side of the table saw. There's a little bit of storage right here, and here's the power switch. Now I'm not plugged in, but I can demonstrate. This is a safety lip, and underneath it is the actual on switch. There's a key in there, of course, that you can remove, and I recommend removing your keys if your small children have access to your workshop. This is very easy to turn off, and it takes a little bit of effort to turn on, and I find that to be a good thing. I would much rather accidentally turn off my saw than accidentally turn it on when I'm setting things up. Of course, take the appropriate safety precautions and unplug your device when you're changing blades, but accidents happen and people can be fast. I have never personally had a moment when I'm going through a lot of repetitive saws or an individual cut and I've accidentally bumped this off. It's just never happened. It's out of the way for me. And again, if it did happen, it wouldn't be the end of the world. It's safe. This is a well-designed table saw. Take a look at the blade system here. You've got your blade guard, of course, and it's individual on both sides, so it'll only rise up depending on what side of the blade you're using to cut your wood. We've got nice anti-kickback prawls. Again, they can go together or they can go individually. And the riving knife underneath, which has two different settings, whether you want to do through cuts or stop cuts. Now, I've had experience with table saws where these kind of attachments are a pain in the rear to deal with. So most of the time, they're not even on the table saws that I see people working with. But this Ridgid table saw setup is very intelligent, and it's easy to disassemble. Let me show you. First you take off the blade guards by lifting this pin and removing. Then we've got the anti-kickback prawls. There's a button right here. Press the button, lift and remove. And then you've just got your riving knife and the saw itself. Now the riving knife sits right in line with the blade, and it's the same thickness, naturally. There are two different settings for this, and if I take off the blade guard, which lays on there nice and flush and is simple to remove, take off the blade guard, inside is a lever. Did you hear that? I'll do it again. That's an unlocking mechanism in the lever. All I had to do was unlock it, and this can come up to a higher setting, or it can be removed entirely. Having this system be so easy and effective makes it easier to make smart and safe decisions for your own personal safety when dealing with the saw. The last thing you want is to nip off a bit of your finger as you're making a crosscut, or have some kickback, a piece of wood blow into your gut and break a rib. So by making the safety smart and easy, you can make an easy decision to be safe and smart. If we take a moment to look down on top of the blade, you can see that this was the lever I was talking about for unlocking and unlocking and removing the riving knife. A simple nut system on the trunnions here for removing this and installing different blades, or a dado stack. And if you look down, inside the drum, it's conical and it's hard to see here, but there's a nice 4-inch diameter circle at the bottom where all of your sawdust falls out. You can either attach a system for vacuuming, or you can let it fall to the ground and sweep it, much like I do. Here's that fence that I was talking about moments ago. It's about 2 inches thick, and it goes the entire length up and down of the table saw. And all I have to do is position it along the markers here. I choose to use the gauge because I've calibrated it precisely. There are inch markers on the left and the right side of the saw blade, and they go down to 32nd of an inch, so it's nice and accurate. I line up the red marking gauge, lock it down tight, and I know it's not going to go anywhere. I took the time during setup. The whole setup for this took me about 4.5 hours because I was anal retentive, very picky about a lot of things. I wanted to make sure that my trunnions were accurate. I wanted to make sure that this was parallel to the saw blade. I wanted to make sure I could get exactly that 90 and exactly that 45 degree and exactly that 30, all of those angles they would be perfect upon setup. And by taking all that time and taking all that pride, I've been able to put out very high quality work. I've removed the microphone for just one moment to talk about one last thing, so please forgive the echoey effect in my basement. This saw is the quietest saw that I've ever worked with. Additionally, it has a braking system when you power it off so that it doesn't just spin forever and open up that opportunity to nick a finger. Take a listen. Did you hear how quiet that was? Could you tell when the brake system engaged? Oh man, the first time I turned this on, I was like a kid in the candy store smiling from ear to ear. And there you have it. I love that table saw. I've gotten so much use out of it. When I was a kid, the table saw was the tool that I was most afraid of. The ones that I started out on were loud and clunky, and this is the complete opposite. It has all the features that I need for my shop, and I love how portable it is. So I'm curious, what kind of table saw do you work with? Be sure to let me know in the comments section below. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I'm the Midwest Man Mountain. Be sure to subscribe. And until next time, bye.